Ethan sees it all. Welcome to episode 8 of Ethan Sees All. Come, place your person on the human rack by the door and take a load off while a staff of tuxedos waits on you, sleeve and cuff. My, is that a new ascot? It complements your neck hole splendidly. Before we dive back into the world of Wherever, I want to take a moment to tell you about another world of sorts, the world of online communities. Meet Amino. You'll find no better app that combines all of your interests alongside a thriving user base with whom they can be shared. From things you might expect like Hunger Games, Sherlock, and Star vs. the Forces of Evil, to things you might not, like BTS roleplays. No matter what you're into, however, there's sure to be a group for it, and users online ready to gab or trade in their latest headcanons. For instance, I've spent a not insignificant amount of time trawling the Steven Universe Amino group after a certain major reveal, and let me tell you, there is no shortage of theories running the mill, but also no shortage of wonderfully creative gemsonas. I mean, really, look at them. They could fuse any second. And did I mention chat rooms? You and your Amino friends are going to create so many inside jokes in your chat rooms. Once you've made an account, which is super easy, just like or comment on a post you find interesting to get the ball rolling. You'll be surprised at what a receptive, like-minded community you encounter. And who knows, your fan art could be featured next. And now, on to the show. Enjoy! Since man, on callus-covered knuckles and soles, first came swinging down from the trees to partake in the fruits of a world yet unexplored, trading his fists for flint and then his rock for steel, he has yearned for a return to the primordial, an age before complication. Just beneath the skin, there lurks a carnal wildness in each of us. Some are adept at repressing it, wreathing themselves in the cocoons of modern society, unaware that every chrysalis eventually bursts. Others reject convention altogether, spending their golden years in common law marriages with troglodytes. You'd be surprised at just how hospitable a cave becomes with the right mood lighting and a sharp eye for decor. In a town like Wherever, the final resting place of industry, one is never quite removed from nature. She makes her presence known in the ever-encroaching avalanche of ivy overtaking the junkyard, in the thorny arms that entangle and invade the rusted-over heaps of trashed cars. You can hear her whisper on the beating of ravens' wings as they encircle, in huge flocks, bits of carrion discarded on the forest's edge. And nowhere is she more talkative than within the embrace of the miles and miles of crowded woodland surrounding the secluded town. As with any locale begging by its very aura to be left alone, the forest attracts certain strains of visitors. Amateur sleuths of the paranormal, shaky cam filmmakers, people in latex animal costumes, and, in diminishing frequency, campers. In fact, a hiker's path was once underway, but after 3 separate contractors signed on only to quit shortly thereafter, citing ghostly sounds that kept the workers awake at night with terrors, the project was abandoned. Now anyone daring, or foolish enough to take refuge in the wood, does so with a dubiously sketched map and an internal compass, because, as legend would have it, those of the magnetic variety become useless fidgeting paperweights past the forest's threshold. Unsurprisingly, reports of missing campers are no stranger to the weekly rag. The Wherever Gazette even dedicates a column to those poor arrogant souls, too proud to ask the long-faced men staring out at them from behind bushes for directions. In lieu of superhuman directional intuition or a breadcrumb trail, the buddy system is acceptable recourse for ensuring at least half of your venturing party survives. And what a tale they'll have to tell for it, provided they haven't gnawed out their own tongues for sustenance. The camping group would have been an even foursome had I tagged along, but determined not to pass around the stomach virus I'd contracted, teaching a sputum-snuffling avian librarian how to tango, I left Papazito, a local merchant of the antique, Domino, the talent vacuum who resides above me, and the landlord, landlord, to go the journey as a trio. The universally agreed upon worst formation for not dying a grisly death. As morning mist dissipates in white wisps over the city, so too do my fears that I'll need to learn the name of yet another new landlord. Grunting and exhausted sighs precede the three men's procession into the apartment complex, a taciturn weariness plain across their expressions. Beatrice and I, gathering mail from the wall of lockboxes by the foyer, watch in fascination as the trio limps past with heads hung low like prisoners of war, a role Mr. Zito has had some practice perfecting. From their bedraggled appearance, you'd be forgiven for assuming a band of forest dwellers was making its first timid steps into society. The landlord and Zito have their fair share of scratches and torn clothing articles, both gasping hoarsely as to be expected from men their ages, but somehow, Domino seems worse for the wear. There's a ripped flannel sleeve wrapped about his upper arm, foam green where the cloth dangles in space, and soaked through a deep scarlet where it swaddles skin. I temper my voice into something approaching casual, and eke out a meager, "What happened? Trouble with the tent?" Domino, cocking back his neck and looking more through me than at me, says with a lilt, "Fret not for the vagabond, tides more all restive ships thereon." Come again? I haven't had a taco in so long. Like a day, muses Domino deliriously. Ahead of any further quandaries from myself or Beatrice, Zito puts a finger to his lips, a signal I've learned to interpret as windbag parley for, "Oh, just wait until you hear this one," as the two older men lead a dreamy-eyed Domino by the shoulders and up the steps to the second floor. The deputy and I exchange startled glances, motionless in various stages of mail retrieval. Our nervous silence is broken up by yet more nervous laughter as we resume the morning's rituals and, at least outwardly, put aside whatever it is we've just witnessed. The neighborly thing to do. I, for instance, turn my attentions to the greatly pleasurable task of sorting junk mail from friendly correspondence, a game made all the more challenging by the propensity of marketing tradesmen to begin their pitches with downright chummy conviction. "Hey there, long time no see, pal," which unerringly has the effect of elevating its reader's mood. How far, then, it is prepared to sink once the message continues. "When was the last time you replaced your oven rack?" Back inside my room, beneath a small dune of comforters, I allow this predicament to stew in my brain broth. It is not, now that I have a moment to really ponder events, an item I can let remain unscrutinized. When was the last time I replaced my oven rack? And what would swapping them out do that a hard-nosed scouring with a wire mesh pad couldn't? How fortunate that my boss pardoned me for the day, lest life's many such urgencies go uncontemplated. And having nothing at all to do, I'm sure, with her beatbox poetry troupe and their semifinals tonight. Plus, I can't exactly fault her for wanting to avoid a bout with floodgate flu. nicknamed so for the evacuatory response it triggers in the body's many points of egress. More points of egress, in fact, than most are immediately aware of, the operations of which a front row patron might not be particularly keen on observing in eye-popping 3D. And really, hasn't their choice of entertainment provided suffering enough? These and similarly pressing thoughts, such as the average lifespan of a pasta strainer, are well on their way to burying other, less pedestrian conundrums. But, like a hastily secured ballast, a distended corpse, and a bog, the ineffable has a knack for rising to the top. There's a feeling I just haven't been able to shake. Lying supine, face cupped in hands, my thoughts drift back to this morning, to the bruised and bloodied campers. It's odd about their injuries. See, people vanish from wherever woods with stunning regularity, and while survivors, even groups of them, aren't unheard of, they usually return with saucer pan eyes and mile-long stares. Not battle wounds. Papazito's retelling instantly takes on new interest. In the meantime, it couldn't hurt to see how Domino's holding up. I've just surmounted the third-floor landing when, to considerable surprise, I catch sight of Beatrice leaving Domino's room, her face somewhat distraught. She's easing the door closed with care when our eyes meet, and donning that cool swagger so natural to officers of the law, she walks over. Throwing a look past her shoulder, she ensures the coast is clear. Force of habit, I assume. Satisfied at the lack of eavesdroppers, Beatrice sidles up and says, conspiratorially,
"So I wasn't the only curious one."
"I guess not," I concede, feeling a slight flush of the cheeks. We lean into the splintering guardrail and share in a comfortable silence. It's important that we cherish those rare friendships in which words are as powerful as their absence. That said... Okay, spill. Beatrice sighs, sentimentality scattered to the wind, and shoots me a grin of jovial exasperation, in the way that only a parent can manage.
"You're as impatient as my boys."
Well, they're bad influences, I say. Beatrice slaps me. You know, like in a friendly way, on the back. She's a very handsy chortler.
"So,"
she says, stabilizing her breath.
"I just went in to see how the poor kid's doing. Figured he must be in some kind of pain, seeing that, you saw the wounds. Well, of course you did. Anyway, he was out like a light. And we agreed it'd be best not to rouse him."
We? I ask.
Oh, right. The landlord's watching him. Applying actual bandages, humming his favorite deathcore lullabies.
Standard care protocol, I chime.
I suggested he get some rest himself. None of them looked in top fighting form this morning. But he insisted on guardian angeling. Says it's not much different than with the gecko.
Pomplamoose isn't a gecko, I say.
"Then who's been selling me car insurance?"
she asks. The landlord didn't mention what, well, happened? I inquire, trying to steer the conversation back to coherence.
"Mom,"
she says, making the emphatic hand-mouth zipper motion.
"Doesn't appear criminal though, and no one needs medevacing, so I'm calling this case closed."
But we still don't know anything. Beatrice slaps me again, this time on the shoulder.
"Welcome to law, kid."
For a time, we loiter at the end of the dusty wing, chatting idly about this and that, discussing the weather, typical of a wherever day, a tundral snowbank at daybreak, succeeded by Lucifer's easy-bake oven, with very little demarcation between the two extremes, as well as some of Beatrice's latest apprehensions, which, besides the mistaken bagel or, God forbid, cronut, are the easiest things to pry from an officer's mouth. Her face lights up at the recollection of recent busts, and she snorts while recounting various foot races and the amount of perps whose untied shoestrings have spelled the chase's end. Face planting is a surefire confidence killer. The light snuffs itself out when her eyes trace a judgmental line down to the stray tethers lying limp by either side of my right foot. Her eyes zip back up to mine with a cocked eyebrow. She waits. In response, my eyes roll back into their sockets. But I breathe an exaggerated sigh and crouch down, making quick work of the laces. Beatrice grins contentedly and starts off down the stairwell. Pleased with the symmetrical roundness of my rabbit ears, I stand and survey the empty hall. As with the other floors, an avalanche of red remembrance poppies flutter across an endless green landscape. The wallpaper, bleached and peeling in obscene rectangles where centuries of harsh sunlight has streamed in. I turn to trot the dozen or so steps leading downstairs when, at the periphery of hearing, so dim that I'm sure I've imagined it, there is a thin rumble, like the sputtering of a backfiring engine. Any chance to identify it promptly vanishes, as fleeting as the sound itself. I stick around for a second, but once it's clear there'll be no encore, I'm off to keep an appointment with my very best friend, someone on whom I can always lean on for support and who always keeps me in their thoughts. My memory foam mattress! Hey, lumbar support is important too. The next day, it is as if nothing has happened at all. The landlord, by extension of a deportment so sunny it could breed melanomas, has one of those smiles that incorporates all 32 teeth. One of those smiles that would impart restless unease if stretched across the face of any less earnest person. He flashes me that huge avuncular grin as we cross paths at the foot of the first floor. But during the brisk walk to my morning shift at CD's Please, the world's sole surviving retailer of the stubbornly obsolete, I can't shake the nagging feeling that there was something insincere about it. Papazito's antique shop is closed by the time my shift ends, but a quick glance through the water-streaked storefront glass reveals darkness as far as the eye can see. Has he opened at all today? I'd been looking forward to the old man's embellished account of the camping trip, which likely would have included pyrotechnic explosions where there could conceivably have been none, and I'll be sure to hear his side when the opportunity arises, but maybe Domino's feeling well enough now to fill in some gaps. As it turns out, feeling well enough is an understatement. By the time I make it home again, Domino's nowhere to be seen. Presumably back into the swing of same-day band formation and dissolution that has hitherto comprised his musical career. Without incident, the week tolls on. Another 7 days of setting up store displays no one will ever see, and the catalyst drifts to the rear of thought, making elbow room for neuroses of more dire consequence. Chief among them, a mounting sympathy for the truly trypophobic. On each of my recent morning walks, I've exited the building to a lawn, pocked in craters like an earth mover's artistic take on a Swiss cheese wheel. What a landscaper could do in place of digging up the excess sward and starting anew escapes me, but I put in a request for one anyway. As well as a request for one of those guys with preternatural Connect 4 skills. The following weeks mirror it in uneventfulness. If one discounts the ever-increasing appearance of mystery holes marring the complex greenery, or the disconcerting dearth of squirrels which once scampered in droves so large as to incite complaints of infestation. And honestly, what kind of heartless monster moans about an overabundance of adorable? No offense to all you anatomically heartless monsters out there, we love you, even if you can't return the favor. No, almost a month passes before the real cause for concern rears its ugly head. It's an otherwise unremarkable evening. I've completed a harrowing turn as cashier sans customers, and am making my exhausted way through the apartment's second set of security doors, when I'm greeted with a sight that wakes me like a bucket of ice water to the giblets. I freeze, dead in my tracks. There, in the common hallway, with its back to the entrance, and an apparent blindness to my presence, crouches a figure, bent over, and resting on knuckles and toe tips. I could be mistaken. It could be the boiler acting funny again, but I think I hear a low, chesty growling. Like it's just caught whiff of my scent, the huddled form wheels around, and I can see, cowering beneath one of the apartment's many non-functional radiators, a trembling albino lizard, made somehow paler by its fear. Pomplamoose has been known to stare mountain lions into submission, seeming to disregard the concept of size altogether, so this is a shock in and of itself. The greater shock comes at the recognition of the face now eyeing me over with bitter distaste. "You interrupted Din Din," Domino says, scowling. "I can't believe this needs saying, but you really shouldn't be making Din Din of your landlord's pets," I say. Might make things awkward during rent collection. I don't say that second part. When I see his focus flit momentarily back to the helpless lizard, I speak up. "What's gotten into you, Dom?" "I'm more concerned with what hasn't," he chides, licking his lips. "Besides, it was marking my territory." I don't know what to address first, so I just go for the most pressing issue. "Domino, I am not letting you eat Pomplamoose," I say, mustering what I hope passes for confidence. A grim amusement plays across his eyes, half-lidded and filled with a growing hunger. Slowly, in predatory strides, he stalks my way. I don't notice it until he's close enough to fog my glasses with his breath. But Domino's frame is noticeably broader. Maybe he'd just been slouching in every single previous interaction we've had, but I don't remember his shoulders occupying their own zip code. And to say his clothes fit snugly would do the sight no justice. Wide tears are split all along his t-shirt seams. Domino inspects my every micro-expression, searching for a glimmer of terror. His lips rend into some warped rendition of a smirk, acidic and taunting. "Tell him to keep that thing on a leash, or tonight, I'll be dining on gecko goulash." He huffs, turns, and stomps off down the corridor. Pomplamoose, from his cove of safety beneath the hall radiator, croaks disdainfully. "I know you're not a gecko, buddy. I know." Later that evening, as I lie in bed, listening to thunder rattle the shutters and rain pounding the town in fearsome torrents, it's all I can do not to think of my earlier embroilment with Domino. or whoever is currently parading around in a suit of his skin. I'm cogitating on a number of likely scenarios that might result in a 180-degree personality change over the course of a few weeks, and have just eliminated evil clone identity theft and favorite TV show cancellation when my ears perk up. Out in the wet misery of twilight, a distance off from our sedated haven of cobblers and canneries, the pack has taken up its nightly call. I've often found the cry of the wolves enchanting, soothing even, in their reminder that just beyond the reach of man's machination, nature reigns immortal. But tonight, no such serenity takes me hold. Instead, in its place, creeps a feeling of inexplicable dread. For hours after the rain lifts, gray veils the quiet town. Columns of wary sunlight are just beginning to dart through a silvery field of clouds. Unable to summon sleep, I've little choice but to soak in the breaking storm, to be hypnotized by the soft pitter-patter of droplets in the aftershocks, and to accept in my heart of hearts that what I heard last night from the floor above was no mere fabrication of the mind. Suddenly, wresting attention away from thoughts of the night prior, there comes a heavy, smashing sound, followed by a terrible, feverish scratching, a startled shout, a bang, and then a yelp, all in rapid succession. Finally, there is silence. The rap at my door that breaches it sends my heart leaping into my throat. I press my ear to the cool wood in hopes of some indication of the person standing opposite it. A fresh blow to the door, aimed expertly at the spot opposite my head, sets my ears ringing. Ouch. Slowly, I ease the door open to see my visibly shaken landlord, wringing his hands and looking rapidly down one end of the hallway to the other. He goes in for another absent-minded knock and stops just short of my face. "Oh, Ethan," he says. "I thought you might still be asleep." "No such luck," I say, opening the door more fully. "Beatrice is away on patrol, and I just didn't know who else to go to," he says. I've never seen the landlord so skittish before. Whatever's unnerved him has to be pretty serious. I gulp at the thought of a sautéed pamplemousse. "What's the hubbub, bub?" I venture, unprepared for the answer, and noticing, for the first time, dark red splotches staining his palms. In tones of a whisper, he confides, It's Domino."